I wanted pink lips, but the haunted mirror revealed a terrifying secret. I never should have opened that door. The old attic door creaked, groaned, and then fell silent. A thick, musty smell wafted out, a mix of dust and something oddly sweet. I could almost taste it. But today, curiosity burned hotter than dread. It was a Saturday, and I was half-heartedly getting ready for a friend's party, but I craved something new, something exciting. There it was, the mirror. It stood tall, cracked, caked in cobwebs. I wiped the surface, revealing a fogged reflection of my face. My lips looked dull, lifeless. I wanted pink, vibrant, luscious. I reached for my lipstick, feeling the smooth tube against my palm. But as the color swirled and blended on my lips, I glanced back into that mirror. And that's when everything changed. Shadows twisted within the glass, flickering like candlelight. A chill swept through the room, followed by the faint sound of whispers, as if I was intruding. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. The whispers translated into words, murmuring secrets I couldn't quite catch. I felt my heart race, thumping louder than the eerie silence. What was that? A flicker caught my eye. Was something moving? The old mirror, now glowing ominously, reflected a figure just beyond the edges. I leaned closer, mouth dry, heart pounding. A cold breeze swept over my neck, and the reflection seemed to smirk. My breath quickened. I turned, but everything behind me was still, too still. Just silence. I felt a knot tightening in my throat as I returned to the mirror. The figure was clearer now. Dark, foreboding, yet eerily familiar. My palms began to sweat, fingers trembling against the cool, cracked frame. The whispers grew louder, filling my ears like an invisible storm. Suddenly, the reflection twisted, a painful scream ripping through the air as the figure lunged forward, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent cry. The mirror shimmered, and I stumbled back, a scream trapped in my throat. The chill wrapped around me like a constricting hand. And then, just like fate, a loud bang echoed through the attic as the door slammed shut behind me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door's slam echoed in the confined space, reverberating against the walls as I stood frozen in shock. The whispers morphed into unintelligible screams, rising in pitch, crashing down on me like a wave of terror. My heart thundered in my chest as I glanced at the now empty reflection of the mirror. It was a window to a dark dimension, our realm of horrors, and I had unwittingly beckoned them in. That I took a shaky step back, only to feel a heaviness pressing against my chest, as if the air itself had thickened. The attic was shifting, morphing into something grotesque and malevolent. The floorboards groaned under my weight, creaking ominously as if warning me to turn back to flee. But the pull of the mirror was undeniable. That I approached again, unable to tear my gaze away from the surface, which was now swirling like a pool of dark water. The image began to shape again, but it was no longer the figure from before. It was a multitude of faces, crying out in agony, eyes wide with unbridled horror. Their mouths moved, pleading silently against the glass, twisted in expressions of despair and torment. Suddenly, a chill skated down my spine, and I felt something brush against the back of my neck. A whisper so intimate, it sent shivers through my soul. "Help us," it breathed, the voice echoing from somewhere deep within the mirror, pulling at my very essence. I recoiled, but my feet refused to move. Something compelled me to listen. That I could feel them clawing at the edges of reality, desperately reaching for something or someone. Panic surged, and instinct kicked in. I turned to find something to break the spell, a hammer, a rock, anything. But before I could reach the door, it swung open by itself, revealing the suffocating darkness of the hallway outside. "Stay here with us," the voices called, sweet and sinister, laced with a hypnotic melody that gnawed at my consciousness. No longer caring nor thinking of the consequences, I steeled myself, determined to escape the oppressive gravity of the attic. Just as I launched forward, the air went icy. I swiftly turned back towards the mirror. Awash in a spectral glow, the faces had shifted to that of familiar people, me friends, my family, anguished, trapped, and begging. My heart shattered as their faces morphed into twisted forms, contorted with despair. That I froze again. "No! Please, not them!" I screamed, but the mirror only absorbed my cries, amplifying the terror emanating from the trapped souls. Their eyes burned with urgency. "Help us!" they implored in unison, their voices rising to a crescendo that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Suddenly, I felt something cold grip my wrist, sharp, piercing, as if the shadows had come alive. I gasped, feeling nails sinking into my flesh. Panic coursed through me, and I looked down to find dark tendrils snaking out from the mirror, swirling like smoke, their ethereal essence absorbing the light in the room. As I struggled, the last thing I registered was their haunting cries before they blended into the mass of darkness. My body began to weaken, the cold wrapping tighter around me, and just before I blacked out, a chilling realization hit me. I was not merely an intruder into this haunted realm, I was in the process of becoming a permanent resident, destined to join the whispers, a new face brimming with despair in the mirror. And then, silence swallowed the attic whole. But then, out of the darkness, I heard my own voice echoing, fading behind me. "Help me!" I spun around, heart racing, but the way out was gone. All that remained was the mirror, glowing ominously, and with a sudden flare, the faces surged to the forefront, their eyes locking onto mine. Then the glass rippled, expanding like a mouth eager to swallow me whole. I felt the pull again, a beckoning call, drowning in despair, and as reality began to blur, I screamed, "No! I won't go," but no sound emerged. Just darkness, and somewhere, a chilling gasp echoed back. The darkness clung to me like a second skin, suffocating and thick, as if the very essence of the attic had conspired to swallow my soul. I stood there, struggling against an unseen force, my mind a tempest of panic and confusion. The mirror shimmered, a grotesque surface reflecting nothing but void, yet I could feel the torment within it, pulsating, wrapping around my consciousness like a noose. Desperate, I pushed against the nothingness, attempting to find my footing. My hands brushed against a cold wall, slick with moisture, as I stumbled back, seeking something, anything to anchor me to reality. The whispers began anew, low and insistent, a serpentine hiss that coiled around my thoughts. I gritted my teeth, fighting to silence them, only to hear my own voice mingling with theirs. "Help me!" Somewhere, underneath the mounting dread, a nagging thought flickered like a dying candle. I had to confront this darkness. With a trembling resolve, I shuffled forward, reaching for the mirror's edge. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold glass, an electric shock coursed through me, sending me reeling back. In an instant, the faces shifted before me once more. They were closer now, their expressions bared to the world without the filter of glass. I could see the texture of their skin, the fear embedded deep in their eyes, and the single terrifying truth: they were not reflections, they were victims. "Help us find peace," they cried, their mouths moving in a synchronized lament, echoing around the space. These were not mere specters, they were souls trapped in a rhythmic cycle of sorrow and need, and something within me stirred a sense of urgency that threatened to drown my rationality. Who were these people? Had they came before me, just as I did? Or were they remnants of the countless souls who had wandered into this perilous attic? Suddenly, the ambient light shifted, fading into an unnatural twilight. Something slithered behind me, and I spun around to find the shadows morphing, dark tendrils inching toward Melith, malicious. They danced with a life of their own, beckoning to me like vultures circling their prey. The air turned frigid, and my breath came out in a visible mist, forming a spectral cloud in the oppressive stillness. "Join us," a whisper twisted through the air, suffocating sweet like rotten fruit. I clapped my hands to my ears, but the invitation pulsed fiercely, crashing against my senses. "We will be whole again, if you give yourself over, never. I shouted, but my voice echoed back at me, distorted, mocking. I could feel my resolve wavering as visions of freedom pressed against my skull, the fleeting joy of being liberated from the weight of reality. But in that moment, I heard a familiar voice among them, piercing through the cacophony. "Help us tell our story." It was my brother, his visage still etched in my mind from the last time I'd seen him alive. The mirror flickered, and for a heartbeat, it revealed him standing next to those twisted expressions of agony. The tears streaming down his face glistened, almost pleading, and my heart sank. "I can't let you suffer alone. I need to help you." I reached toward the mirror, hoping to grasp his hand, to pull him back to me. "I've missed you, please, let me in." As my fingers hovered near the glass, a vibrant shock spun me around, and I felt a rush of wind whoosh past, tightening around my throat. The tendrils were back, spiraling closer, entwining my limbs like serpents pinning down their prey. My blood ran cold as hundreds of anguished faces filled the mirror's surface, each one now screaming wordlessly, a cacophony of despair that rose like a storm. The mirror rippled, and suddenly, a figure emerged from its depths, an embodiment of darkness cloaked in the vortex of lost souls. Red eyes glinted, hungry and malevolent, locking onto mine. "You are tethered now, child. This realm has opened, and with it, you shall choose, join their anguish, or face the true horror of what you have unleashed." With every word spoken, I felt the fraying bond that held my sanity together beginning to splinter. Each scream of the damned echoed in my ears, drilling into my consciousness as if searching for a way in. I felt myself falling yet again, no longer sure of what was real, or if escape was an option, and then, with a malevolent grin, the figure lunged, its shadow enveloping me whole. "Welcome home," it whispered, and in that moment, the darkness collapsed, plunging me into an abyss where I no longer existed. In the depths of the void, something whispered back through the shadows, longing and ominous, "You will take your place among us." Before I could scream again, the world around me shattered like glass, and I was swallowed whole by the void, gasping for air that no longer existed. And then I felt them. Cold fingers intertwining with mine as whispers swirled around, coaxing me even deeper into the abyss. "Help us," they urged, their voices entwined with mine, resonating in a symphony of chaos. I realized, even through the darkness, I was not alone. Their presence wrapped around me, and a dread-filled revelation blossomed in my chest. "Turn back, help us before it's too late." The walls of reality shuddered, and just as I grasped that I was not simply a spectator in this horror, it happened. A blinding flash ignited the darkness, tearing it to shreds as faces began to merge into one, another reflection pulling back to the surface of the glass. And then, in a moment that felt like eternity, I met my own eyes, staring back at me, but they were not mine, they were the eyes of someone else, twisted in a permanent scream. "Join us," it whispered, as the mirror shattered. The remnants of the shattered mirror hung in the air like glimmering shards of truth, suspended in that horrifying moment, revealing glimpses of what lay beyond the veil. The room pulsed with a breath of cold air mingled with an unbearable weight of despair, as if anguish pressed against my chest, urging me to collapse. My heart raced as I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the apparition that now inhabited the room with me. The dark figure lingered, its grotesque face shifting, morphing into the forms of all the souls trapped within the mirror, each one a cry for salvation, yet here I was, tethered within their torment. I recognized them now, flickers of their stories snaking into my mind, mingling with the fears already etched there. Among the cacophony of wails, one voice stood out, piercing yet soft, as if whispered through a veil of pain. "We trusted you." It was my brother again. But this time, the weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air, and I felt it settle upon my shoulders, suffocating me. "Let me help you," I croaked, fighting against the fear that threatened to swallow me. But as I called out, I realized I had already succumbed. The words were swallowed by the dark tendrils slinking around me, drawing tighter with each syllable. The room twisted, the walls undulated like the surface of a troubled sea. Shadows spooled forth, wrapping around the room, feeding off the despair that thrummed in my veins, fueling their grotesque dance. I felt their icy caress enveloping me, cradling me, ensnaring me. "They want your essence, your life," a voice echoed deep within me, resonant and ancient, fueling a sense of dread that churned my stomach. As the walls bled blackness, drowning out the last vestiges of light, I turned my gaze toward the floor, desperate for an escape, for a sign that my reality had not slipped entirely away. But instead, I found a puddle of darkness spreading beneath my feet, reflecting 1,000 tortured faces. This was not an ordinary puddle. It glimmered with a slick, oily sheen, emanating a putrid stench that stung my nostrils. The faces shifted again, the sorrow palpable, crawling up my legs as I froze. "You remain, you are part of us now," they whispered, their voices entwining like a tempest. The sensation of their fingers, ghostly yet insistent, wrapped around my ankles, pulling me toward the depths of the darkness pooling beneath. The specter, lurking just outside my peripheral vision, seemed to revel in my despair, feeding off the terror swelling within me. "Choose, child," it hissed, lips curling into a smile that distorted its already monstrous visage. "Will you join them willingly, or shall I take you by force?" My heart raced, pounding against the confines of my ribcage as I imagined the cursed fate awaiting me on the other side of that black mirror, where lost souls twisted in agony, entrapped forever in an agonizing cycle of suffering. I had no answers, no immediate escape, only the sensation of being gnawed at by a darkness that hungered for my very essence. Then, as if summoned by my desperate yearning, the floor trembled, vibrating beneath me in rhythm to my racing heart. For an agonizing moment, I glimpsed the doorway behind me, flickering with a faint light, a promise of safety that seemed impossibly distant. But even as I weighed my options, a chilling sensation rippled through the air. "You cannot escape so easily," the figure taunted, its shadow twisting ominously closer. The whispers escalated into a shriek, jarring my senses, urging my legs to move. Just as I was about to flee toward the light, something formidable shot out from the depths beneath me, a dark tendril, thick and insistent, latching onto my waist, dragging me downward with an irresistible force. Screams clawed at my throat as I struggled against their grip, feeling their cold tendrils pierce through my skin, siphoning warmth from my body as I was pulled into the depths of the abyss, an ocean of despair threatening to swallow me whole. "Help! No!" I screeched, panic clawing its way up my throat. But with one final, desperate gasp, I felt myself being enveloped by darkness as I surrendered to the shadows. And just as I feared I had crossed the threshold, the weight released, and everything fell silent, the air around me stale and cold. I opened my eyes, finding myself curled into a tight ball on a hardwood floor, lit only by flickering candlelight, surrounded by the remnants of the shattered mirror they'd conjured, scattered like broken promises, but the figures were nowhere to be seen. The walls groaned, and the very air seemed to ripple with anticipation. In the suffocating stillness, a new sound emerged, one that was both familiar and horrifyingly foreign. From the depths of the dark recesses, I heard them, soft gasping breaths and distant weeping, echoing through the shadows. And then a child's voice pierced the quiet, innocent and sorrowful. "Help us!" I realized then it wasn't over. The darkness had merely shifted its focus, a vast expanse of evil lingering just outside my vision. I wasn't alone. The whispers had grown louder, coaxing me back toward the dark, igniting a dread within, compelling me to look again. With dread pooling in my stomach, I turned slowly, feeling the weight of silence crackle against my skin. The face stared back at me from the depths of the mirror fragments, waiting with malevolent curiosity, and as recognition sank in, I recoiled. For beneath the sorrowful guise, I found my own eyes, twisted in a Ghanaian echo of my brother, pleading for salvation yet again. "Help us, you must choose," they cried, and before I could respond, darkness surged forward, enveloping me and pulling me close as I fought against the invisible chains binding me. What would I do? The soul of my brother cried out to me, and in that desperate moment, I felt the cold fingers of fate wrap tightly around my heart, squeezing until I gasped for breath. The walls trembled, and the mirror flickered ominously once more, giving way to the horrors awaiting me on the other side. I blinked hard, my vision struggling against the ominous fog that encroached upon my senses. The fragments of the mirror lay scattered around me, glimmering like a sea of broken wishes under the flickering candlelight. But the warmth of the light felt distant, its feeble glow battling the encroaching shadows that writhed between the shards, twisting and coiling, hungry for my attention. The whispers surged around me again, a cacophony that drowned out rational thought, drawing me deeper into their embrace. "Help us," they implored in unison, grotesque yet childlike, each voice laced with an edge of despair that clawed at my heart. But with each plea, my own pulse quickened, ripping through me like an echo of dread. "Two can't," I stuttered, my voice barely rising above the ghostly requests. I could feel the weight of countless gazes, the presence of hungry spirits lurking just beyond my comprehension. They drifted invisibly around me, their silent wails cascading like a waterfall of sorrow, and I cringed as the air thickened with their despair. Suddenly, a sharp crack broke through the whispering chaos. One of the mirror fragments had begun to shift, rolling with a mind of its own until it rested upright, reflecting the darkness that surrounded me. In that warped glass, shapes began to materialize, spectral figures forming from the abyss, their twisted bodies jerking with an unnatural rhythm, reflections of the long-lost trapped souls yearning for freedom. "I was wrong to leave you," a voice hissed from beyond, undeniably familiar yet laced with malice. It was my own, echoing back at me from the other side of the glass, taunting me with the reflection of a version I had never wished to become. The figure in the mirror smirked, its features warping into twisted delight as I gasped in horror. "What do you want?" I implored, my heart hammering against the walls of my chest as icy fingers of dread threatened to tear me apart. The mirrored figure leaned closer, and with an uncanny smirk, I realized it was not a mere reflection but a sinister replica of myself. "To be whole," it answered, the voice dripping with venomous sweetness and malice. "To take what you offered so freely, to free ourselves from these shackles." With each utterance, a pulse of dark energy surged through the room, dimming the candlelight further, casting impossibly deep shadows that twisted the familiar into grotesque caricatures of what I once knew. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted Motion's figure darting between the shards, its features obscured but the essence of childhood wonder unmistakable. "No!" I screamed as I recognized the figure, my younger brother's silhouette dancing just beyond reach. "Stay away from there!" But the fabric of reality warped. The edges of the mirror rippled like water disturbed, and the room appeared to swell in size, expanding into a vast arena of nightmarish visions and mournful echoes. My instinct screamed at me to turn away, but the figure of my brother, mere feet away, beckoned, his arms stretching through the veil, desperate to be reunited. "Please. It's not safe." I begged again, but my own form's laughter overcame my plea, dissonant and chilling. "Let him come to me, dear sister. He yearns just like us to be free." The pleading of the lost souls intensified, drawing me closer as shadows twisted around me like serpents. I felt an urge to reach across the mirror, to clasp my brother's hand, yet fear rooted me in placid dread realization washing over me. "If you take his hand, you'll never return," a spectral whisper floated through the air, curling around my mind like smoke. "He belongs with us." A tremor plunged through the wooden floor beneath me, fissures cracking wide, and from the depths of the void, dark tendrils ascended, swirling like smoke, seeking liberation through my choices. I fought against their grasp, every instinct screaming to protect not only my brother but my very soul. The mirror shifted again, the glass now a warping portal that revealed glimpses of twisted realities where despair reigns, where faces of lost children melted into grotesque masks of horror and realization. "Choose." My own doppelganger sang, voice dripping with desire, gripping my brother's hand in a ghastly embrace. "Or become what you see." As this horrifying vision threatened to consume me, I felt a piercing chill wrap around my spine in a vice-like grip, and just as I felt I might be shredded by the emotional torrent, a strange pulse emitted from my chest, a frantic thrum that resonated through the shadows. I could sense it, the merging of their despair as the darkness prepared to explode, revealing the true horrors behind the veil. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, the ground beneath me split wider, like the jaws of a leviathan ready to devour. My brother caught my gaze, his eyes filled with tears, and then the mirror trembled violently, flashing a blinding light, illuminating every hidden dark corner of the room. But in that moment of clarity, I made my choice. And that choice would not just awaken the horrors dormant behind the glass but unleash them upon our very reality. As the darkness sputtered and screamed, the portal widened, revealing a writhing void into which my brother was being dragged, despite my desperate grasp. I reached forward, a scream caught in my throat, but before the darkness entirely consumed him, he looked back at me, and what I saw in his eyes sent horror deep into my bones. "I wanted pink lips," he whispered, the words crawling forth like a curse, but the haunted mirror revealed something far more terrifying than. The shadows obliterated his form completely, leaving only the mirrored reflection of my own face twisted in terror. And with that, the candlelight extinguished, plunging me headfirst into an abyss of darkness, the whispers rising into a furious roar. The last thing I heard before everything went silent was the laughter of the mirror, echoing my fate, promising nothing but despair. The silence that followed was suffocating, a thick blanket of dread wrapping around me like a noose. Moments stretched into eternity, and as I slowly regained my bearings, I became acutely aware of the return of the whispers. They were louder now, a dissonant choir that spiraled around me, reverberating through the void, each resonating tone scraping against my sanity. I staggered backward, my heart hammering, seeking refuge from the unseen horrors lurking just beyond my perception. But the darkness was alive, pulsating with a ghastly energy that sent my breath quickening and my stomach churning. Shadows flickered in patterns of madness, morphing into shapes that twisted in my periphery. A flick of a hand, a glimmer of a face, occasionally coiling to reveal eyes filled with unfathomable sorrow. "Come play with us," the voices urged, their tones sweetened by my brother's innocent plea, tortured by sorrow, and made sinister by the darkness. The flashes from the mirror lingered in my thoughts, the laughing faces, the desolate glimmers of haunted children, ravenous shadows with yearning souls, but the image of my brother's terrified expression remained seared in my mind. "Shut up! Stay away from me!" I cried, my voice cracking under the weight of impending despair, but my words seemed to ignite the brimming fury of the spectral beings encircling me. The cacophony crescendoed, a din of sorrow that throbbed around me, and the shadows lunged closer, as if drawn to my fear. I turned, stumbling through darkness, not knowing where escape might lie, but desperation drove me forward. Just when I thought I might break through the suffocating wave, I stumbled upon something cold and slick beneath my foot, living darkness that twisted my ankle and sent me crashing to the floor. The shadows coiled around my legs, clutching as though they craved my very essence. I fought against the umbral tendrils, but they dragged me down, relentless and clinging, whispering promises too seductive to ignore. "Join us," they chanted in a chorus as maddening as my own heartbeat. "You are one of us now. Would you not rather be free?" With every pulse from the ground, blinding flashes of the mirror portal erupted in my mind, the swirling images combusting, children crying, their screams merging into one soul-wrenching symphony of despair. My brother's voice was among them, a haunting reminder of my betrayal, leaving me paralyzed with guilt. Behind me, something shifted, a dark mass breaching the stillness that enveloped the chamber. I turned, struggling against the grasp of despair, half expecting the reflection of my own torment in the shadows. What I saw instead sent a shudder crawling along my spine. Figures forming, swirling amidst the shadows, flailing limbs and spectral faces emerging as they began to coalesce into the semblance of those I once recognized. Faces of children from the mirror, devoid of color, their expressions twisted into masks of agony, their mouths moving in sync with the spectral whispers. "Help us," they all cried, reaching toward me, fingers wreathed in darkness. "We just want to play." It was a grotesque mockery of childhood joy, their mouths twisted in smiles that sent icy fingers of fear skittering down my spine. Each figure was more disturbing than the last, a melting face devoid of eyes, a child with streaks of crimson on her lips, a boy carved from shadow who mirrored my brother's features but wore an eternal frown. I wanted to scream, wanted to tell them to leave, yet a part of me longed for the warmth of their connection, to not be alone in this haunting expanse of agony. No. I screamed, wrenching free from the tendril's grasp, powered by a sudden surge of clarity. "You aren't real. You're nothing but a reflection of my fear." As I shouted, the shadows recoiled, hissing with rage, their wrath rekindled. I readied myself to bolt toward what I thought might be an escape, but just as I turned, the ground shattered underneath me. In an explosion of darkness, it gave way, revealing a gaping maw that yawned wider, resembling the mirror from which I had come. The Darkness erupted around me, a whirlpool of insanity, dragging my body and mind toward the yawning abyss. With every heartbeat, my own voice reverberated through the chaos, echoing words of despair, taunting me mercilessly. "Help us," they cried, voices drawing nearer, pulling me in, while my brother's face flashed before me again, clear and unmistakable but wreathed in shadows that spat curses in chilling harmony. In that moment, amidst the roiling darkness, a hand shot forth from the void, a small, familiar hand, clutching desperately toward me, the warmth contrasting against the icy gale. I felt my heart stop. Was it him? I reached out, but the shadows surged forward, engulfing the small hand, and with a deafening shriek, the shadowy mouths opened wide, threatening to swallow everything in their midst. "I hope you wanted the truth," they howled, voices merging into one piercing, echoing wrath as I felt myself being dragged into oblivion, and just like that, a vibrant flash of pink kaleidoscopic and brilliant pierced through the darkness, illuminating the terror before me. Then everything went black. The cacophony of silence enveloped me, drowning out the echoes of laughter that once seemed a mere memory. My eyes shot open, adjusting to the darkness that felt thicker than before. There was no feeling of the ground beneath me, only an unsettling weightlessness that left me adrift in a cavern of despair. I attempted to scream, but my voice was swallowed whole into the oppressive void, becoming just another whisper in the whirlwind of my fears. Panic seized me anew. Where was I? Eons could have passed as I drifted, swaddled in a shroud of shadows, the desolation around me torn only by the occasional flutter of sound. The whispers had returned, intertwining like smoke, soft and slithering, carrying secrets and lies that wrapped tighter around the stillness. "Welcome back," they cooed. "Your turn to play is just beginning." Instinctively, I turned my head, hoping to catch a glimpse of something beyond the suffocating darkness. And there it was, the faintest glow, a ghostly tendril of light threading through the murkiness, beckoning me forward. Driven by an inexplicable compulsion, I reached out, the sensation both enticing and appalling as the tendril wrapped around my fingers, icy yet electrifying. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, swirling like a tempest, and the light intensified. Images bloomed before me, scenes of lore flickered across the dim background, strung together like a grotesque film. Children playing in a sunlit field, laughter ringing bright, then flitting to darker moments, their faces twisted by grief as they looked back at me, the view melting together in a grotesquerie that churned my stomach. "Do you remember?" the whispers urged, oscillating with urgency. "Can you feel their pain?" I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to shield myself from the onslaught, memories invading my mind like the very nightmares I sought to escape. Bursts of joy enveloped me in radiant colors, yet the darkness gnawed at the edges, tainting each bright flash with dread. I heard my brother's laughter weave through it all, pure, innocent, and then so abruptly it vanished, warping into a sigh that echoed immense sorrow. Lipstick red flowers appeared on either side of the ethereal pathway lit with the ghastly glow, their petals glistening ominously, spawning long, entangled vines that reached towards me as if yearning for my touch. Terror surged through me, but also an inescapable pull toward the flowery specters, an almost magnetic force that beckoned me to draw closer. "Find me," the whispers maintained, their allure strange yet strangely comforting. "I'm right here just like the others." A surge of longing flooded my veins, overshadowing every ounce of resistance. As I stepped tentatively forward, the moment the petals brushed against my skin, a memory broke free, a swift montage playing out like a snap of film. My brother's face, once innocent, now fractured with betrayal, his eyes low with despair as shadows coiled around him, squashing the vibrant joy of childhood, his tiny voice begging, pleading for me to step into the light, to save him from whatever demonic fate awaited. Before clarity struck, the warmth of the glow yanked me back into its wrath. The swirling shadows merged, reshaping themselves into menacing figures, distorted renditions of the children from the mirror, their expressions warped, faces cracked in grim smiles that shone with something that was both hunger and longing. Each spectral figure extended their arms, thin fingers clawing desperately as they fell into aching silence. "Join us!" they shrieked, their shrieks reverberating off the walls of my consciousness like shattering glass. "Help us break free! There's more to uncover." I stumbled backward, heart pounding as I grasped the enormity of their words. The shadows pulling at my ankles grew thicker, ropes of darkness tightening with each fleeting heartbeat. My limbs felt frozen, and the darkness around me pulsed, alive, almost breathing, promising me answers wrapped in the inevitable sorrow that accompanied each truth. "Let them know," a voice commanded from behind. I turned, terror constricting my throat. Standing there was a silhouette cloaked in shadows, mouth twisted into a mocking grin, eyes gleaming with madness. "Let them know the truth," it echoed once more, and as it raised an arm toward me, the air around grew colder. I could feel the darkness of the moment bleeding into my skin, trying to seep inside me. I gasped, backing away, yet behind me, the mirror shimmered into view, cracked and luminous, reflecting shades of nightmares stolen from the depths of my soul, and then the ground beneath me rumbled ominously. Tendrils of fog coiled from the mirror, billowing outwards, creeping toward me in a monstrous wave, promising only one thing: it was not just a mirror anymore, but an open maw of horror, waiting to swallow me whole. Just as I felt that crushing heartbeat of dread cement before me, laughter erupted all around, chaotic, joyless, and maddening. Then the mirror shattered. The pieces of the shattered mirror scattered like broken dreams across the floor, reflecting a world twisted beyond recognition. Each glint of glass carried the faces of the children, their eyes pleading, a kaleidoscope of innocence tainted with terror. I stumbled back, my heart thundering. The laughter, now a cacophony, filled the void, sharp enough to cut through the disorienting haze that enveloped me. "Come closer. Feel their joy." The voice danced around me, seductive and venomous. I pressed my palms against my ears, but nothing could silence the incessant din, a grotesque orchestra of hope and despair gnawing at my resolve. As I teetered on the brink of madness, the void changed. Dark flames flickered on the horizon, devouring the fragments of the mirror, renewed to reflect the very essence of anguish. In that twilight haze, the children, now barely recognizable, crawled toward me on all fours, their limbs bent at angles that defied nature. They scraped the ground with fingertips that left trails of crimson in their wake, the brightness of life fading from their once vibrant bodies. "Join us," they murmured in an eerie unison, their voices blending to form an unsettling melody that coiled around my heart, constricting with each desperate pulse. "Play forever." I felt an unbearable weight settle at the pit of my stomach, fear pinching my throat until it threatened to choke me. It was there, in that moment, I caught a glimpse of my brother, his sweet face now distorted, tears streaking down his cheeks, forming dark rivulets that seeped into the soil. His mouth moved, a silent scream echoing against the roar of laughter, and a blackened tear fell from his eyes, hitting the ground with a wet slap, breaking the stillness. "Help me," he mouthed, desperation shimmering in those once innocent eyes. But as I took a step forward, the world lurched like a nightmare, time itself twisting and reshaping the fabric of reality until I was no longer in control. I turned back toward the sinister silhouette standing near the remnants of the mirror, now coalescing into something tangible. It was a figure draped in shadows, skin like shifting smoke, and limbs that extended infinitely. With every breath it took, darkness poured from its mouth, coiling around the remaining shards, whispering secrets that stained the air, turning sweet memories into bitter ash. "Let them surrender to their fate," it hissed, each word a blade slicing against my consciousness. "You cannot save them, but you can be free." In that moment, the fog thickened, wrapping around my legs and pulling me toward its gaping maw. The children's cries grew louder, reverberating through the air like a twisted symphony, enticing and horrifying. "Leave him. Join us. Play," they screeched. Torn between torment and temptation, the horror seeped into my bones, filling me with dread. "Stop!" I screamed into the void, though my voice barely rose above the cacophony. I glared at the pleading image of my brother, desperately wanting to reach for him, to pull him from the abyss, but feeling the pull of the void too strong, too relentless. The silhouette laughed, a chilling harmony joining the raucous clamor. "The game has only just begun." It extended its arms, fingers elongating with malice, and I suddenly felt an electric jolt surge through me. With it came flashes not just of the children, but of those lost before, parents and friends whose faces flickered into view, entwined with the children's grotesque chorus, "Save us." They echoed, their faces contorting with fear, mingling with shadows of despair, all searching for liberation that would never come. "Follow the light. You know your truth." My chest tightened, the weight of their despair choking me until I could barely breathe. My brother's eyes locked onto mine, the last agonizing strand of innocence tethered between us, begging for release, yet the tendrils of darkness tightened around my heart, feeding off my resolve. Before I could react, the ground split open before me, an abyss darker than any night, an inescapable vortex pulling at my very essence. The whispers intensified, igniting every suppressed fear within me while my brother's face vanished into the expanding void. The silhouette danced, bathed in malice, the flickering edges of its form shimmering with anticipation, and in that suffocating moment, the laughter crescendoed until it became a single piercing note both beautiful and horrific. I felt myself slipping, the shadows taking me as I fought to find my footing, my brother's twisted reflection still haunting my vision, but then, a scream broke through the chaos, piercing and raw, not from the children, not from the shadow, but from somewhere deep within myself. With it came clarity, a surge of strength as I lunged forward only to find myself consumed by the darkness, its cold embrace swallowing my scream. The last thing I saw was my brother's shadow, his face blurred, stretching toward me, as I was pulled screaming into an eternal night of darkness waiting to claim my light, and then there was silence. The silence was thick as molasses, wrapping around me like a dense fog. I surfaced with a gasp, disoriented and vulnerable, the echoes of chaos replaced by a stillness so deep it felt unnatural. My heart raced in the aftermath of desperation, the last vestiges of my brother's face burned into my mind like a branding mark. Where was I? The ground beneath me was coarse, resembling dirt mingled with something unnameable, filthy and heavy. That I shifted unsteadily, my hands digging into the earth, and the scent hit me a mix of decay and something floral, cloying but stripped of life. I was no longer in my own world, yet the echoes of laughter lingered at the edge of my senses, whispering promises of dire secrets yet to be unveiled. As I pushed myself to my feet, the shadows danced beyond the fringes of my vision. I turned, frantically scanning my surroundings. The air was palpably charged, thick with an energy that crackled like electricity. It felt as if the very ground was pulsating, a heartbeat imbued with malice. I stumbled forward, disoriented, but the laughter returned, a cacophony swirling around me, mingled with cries that betrayed a sense of joy twisted with impending doom. Innocence is a game, and joy must be paid for, a voice cooed, low and smooth like silk weathered by time. The silhouette was there again, but this time it swirled with a life of its own, fluid and changing, capturing the remains of light as it danced, forming phantoms that took shape within the darkness. I wanted to retreat, to shield myself from its penetrating gaze, but I found myself unable to turn away. Come play, it urged, with the sweetest of whispers, fingers reaching out, beckoning me closer. This realm is a tapestry of desires left unfulfilled. You have a choice, don't you want to see them? The joy of your brother, forever preserved, or, perhaps, the truth behind that shattered mirror. I could feel the betrayal gnawing at my resolve. The children's voices blended into a single echoing chant, join us forever. Play. The memory of their twisted forms clawed at my sanity, and yet I could not shake the weight of my brother's silent scream, help. I shouted into the mainstream of pervasive shadows, my voice swallowed by the insatiable laughter. I want play your game. Panic surged within me like a wildfire, fierce and unstoppable. And yet, a whisper of something darker slithered back. The silhouette undulated, its eyes like pits of despair, smirking as it responded, but dear child, you already are. In an instant, the ground beneath me shifted. With a violent lurch, I was falling, not in any expected way, but spiraling into a kaleidoscope of colors, twisted memories morphing into a landscape of torment. The bitterness of loss hovered like a fog thick enough to choke on. I could feel every ounce of joy I'd once taken for granted crumbling within me. I landed hard on the ground, surrounded by others' faces I recognized but had forgotten, all caught in an eternal loop of their own haunting games. They reached out to me, hands clamoring in desperation. Among them, I spotted a girl I once knew under the blinding sun of childhood. Her hair was tousled and wild, tears streaking her dirt-smeared cheeks. They'll take you forever if you let them, she pleaded, her voice drowned amidst the chaos, her hands trembling as they grasped at clarity. You have to fight it. But just as hope flickered amidst the shadows, the laughter intensified until it surrounded me, drowning out her words. The figure loomed large now, encased in darkness, its countenance twisted with glee. "Are you listening to the delusions or the truths, dear child? There is ecstasy in surrender." Shadows began to swirl feverishly around me, taking life, manifesting gruesome visages of my past friends and strangers lost in the haze of time. But there too was my brother, his mouth moving without sound, pleading just as I had seen last, but now his figure shredded under the growing pressure of dark tendrils reaching, wrapping, consuming. "Stay away from him!" I shouted, panic rising like bile in my throat. The shadows shuddered reluctantly at my outcry, mocking my resolve. But he vanished, absorbed into the suffocating abyss, and just then, everything went dark. I felt weightless, as though I were suspended in time between life and death. The sounds of laughter faded, replaced by whispers that slithered like serpents brushing along my skin, promises yearning to be fulfilled. "Play, forever." The insistence grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, blocking the remnants of my humanity from breaking through. I struggled to remember my name, my reason, but as the darkness claimed me, the last thing I heard was that laugh, dripping with delight, and then, a voice wrenched me from the void, a young, pure voice echoing distantly, with a jagged edge of reality. "Help me. I'm right here." Suddenly, I plunged back into that place of torment, and the laughter fell away. There was my brother once more, the boy I would do anything to save, now reaching through the veil that bound us, eyes wide with unfathomable terror. But as I lunged to grasp his hand, the ground beneath him began to shift, a chasm splitting open. No. I screamed, but the shadows surged again, and he screamed with a silken voice that sent jolts of despair through me. In that moment, a frenzied panic unleashed within me as I lunged towards that abyss, desperate to pull him free from the grasp of the darkness that had begun to consume him. I could feel the fabric of reality tearing, the laughter rising like a tidal wave of madness, coaxing me toward an unfathomable fate, and then, with every ounce of strength I had, I leaped forward, but the shadows swallowed my brother with one swift motion, and he vanished, leaving behind only echoes of his fear. That I was left hanging at the edge, heart pounding, teetering on the precipice of the abyss, when the reflection in the glass whispered my name. "You chose this. But did you choose correctly?" With horror chilling my spine, I glanced at the shards at my feet, each fracture glinting menacingly. I felt my own twisted reflection stare back, an empty shell, hollow and lost. The laughter returned, a haunting melody that turned the blood in my veins to ice, and as I stumbled back, the ground shifted again. My eyes widened as I realized I was not alone in the dark. More faces began to form, each filled with the same mounting horror, all staring at me, their silent pleas rippling through the darkness. And then, at the edge of my vision, something massive shifted a hand, creeping out. A movement so deliberate and chilling that every fiber of my being screamed in protest. I stepped back, my heart racing as the shadows writhed in excitement. The weight of despair pressed down on me, and as I stood poised at the brink of sanity, I felt something drag at the hem of my soul. I dared not look away, yet the shadows beckoned me to look deeper, push further, and then, I heard it. The most dreadful of whispers, echoing from the depths of the darkness, "Welcome home." I turned, but it was too late. The shadows erupted, crashing toward me like a flood, arms reaching, mouths gaping wide, and I was swept away into the welcoming dark, just as I felt a chilling grip wrap around my ankle, dragging me down, down, down into the void. The fear enveloped me like a cloak woven from unholy despair, binding me tight, as I plummeted into the maw of darkness that yawned beneath me. I felt my sanity shred, caught in a whirlwind of anguish that clawed at my mind, wanting to shatter me completely. That childlike voice still echoed in the chasms of my mind, "Help us," my brother's soft, terrified plea mingling with the sounds of countless others, each desperate cry woven into one endless lament. As the shadows swallowed my form, reality twisted around me, bending and warping until it felt like I was living inside a nightmare of the mirror's making. The last shred of light faded as I fell deeper, drowning in an ocean that pulsed with despair, seamlessly blending memories of laughter and pain, innocence lost forever. When I finally landed, the ground met me with a hard thud, knocking the breath from my lungs. I gasped, panic surging as I tried to regain my bearings. The void had transformed into a vast, cavernous place, a hellish reflection of the attic, filled with whispers that coiled around me, beckoning, cheering, as if the darkness rejoiced in my arrival. Shrieks of laughter echoed off the cold stone walls, horror mingled with malicious glee. I stood amidst specters of children, their forms flickering, warped silhouettes of joy now twisted, tormented, laughing at my plight. Their mouths opened in shrieks, contorting into mirthful expressions as they reached out to me, ethereal fingers brushing against my skin, each touch like ice dripping into my veins. "Come play." They sang in unison, their voices drowning out the whispers of despair clawing at my mind. "Join us forever, entertain and never be alone." I stumbled back, the specters closing in, laughter transforming into thunderous applause, reverberating in my chest. I searched frantically for a way out, a flicker of truth amid the maelstrom of anguish. "No!" I screamed. "I won't play your game," but my words faded as the shadows closed in tighter, wrapping around my limbs with a sickening grip. Behind them, a shrouded figure emerged, a grotesque version of myself. It stepped forward, twisted and malevolent, the reflection of a tortured soul with a grin that sliced through the darkness. "You wanted pink lips," the figure hissed, its voice a mocking echo of my own. "But look what you've become. You are nothing but a vessel for their laughter and their fears. You chose to stay, to help them. And now," it gestured to the children, their faces warped in glee as they danced in a mocking circle around us, "you are one of us. Lost. Forgotten. Forever." A chilling realization hit me hard. The specters were not just lost, they were tainted fragments of everyone I had known. Friends, family, souls intertwined with mine through the threads of the Mirora prison of my own making, one that I beckoned into existence. Each anguished face I recognized now twisted into a mockery of what they once were. Each joy turned to torment, and all that remained was the laughter. Suddenly, I felt the shadows shift beneath me, a rift tearing open, a glimmer of a gateway back to reality flickered beyond the grasp of tendrils and tortured souls. I hesitated, my heart racing, the laughter morphing into cries of despair as if the darkness wanted me to choose between the fear of the real and the acceptance of the cursed. "Choose quickly." The distorted version of me urged, extending an outstretched arm, the air around us heavy with desperation. "In or out? You can't exist in two worlds." My breaths quickened, glancing back at that sliver of light. "My brother!" I screamed, the fullness of my sorrow rushing back like a tide. "I can't leave him here. I need to save him." But behind me, the mockery grew louder. "Save yourself first. Or join the others." In that heartbeat of desperation, the laughter crescendoed until it morphed into screams, each child, each tortured reflection wailing in unison, begging, pleading to be freed from the shackles of our shared fate. Suddenly, the laughter spiraled into an unbearable cacophony, melting into cries of anguish that echoed within me, slicing through the fabric of my thoughts. "Your brother has been waiting," the figure sneered, twisting its features in a fit of glee. "By sacrificing one, you save another. Would you prefer that he suffer alone?" The shadows surged around me, pulling at my limbs with their icy fingers. I wanted to close my eyes to block the vision of my brother's face flickering at the edges of my mind, entangled in despair, echoing his own plea, "Help us." Desperation clawed as raw as the darkness surrounding me. It coiled tightly around my heart, a vice tightening in horrifying synchronicity with the laughter that drowned every rational thought. "No. I won't allow you to take him." I screamed one last time, thrashing against the void that tightened its grasp. Then, in one final surge of defiance, I reached toward that fleeting light, a desperate grasp at salvation. The shadow began to whisper, low and taunting. "You can't escape," but the words faded amidst an explosion of brilliance. With a blinding flash, the shadows erupted, and I felt my heart racing. The screams grew louder, blending with laughter and love mingled with despair. I fought against the force, grasping the light harder, visions of my brother swirling in my mind until all I could see was his face, innocent, terrified, begging for escape. In that moment of clarity, realization struck me, piercing through the horror. "I won't abandon you. I'll save you no matter the cost." And as I plunged deeper into the brightness, the darkness howled in agony, shadows unraveling as I tore into the abyss. The last thing I heard was that laughter tearing apart in despair and rage, echoing like a twisted lullaby, "Welcome to your new reality." And then there it was, the echo of my own voice answering back, chillingly sweet and sinister, "Help us," just as the light finally consumed everything, leaving nothing but silence and shadows lingering across empty glass fragments scattered across the haunted attic floor.